Hello and welcome to the recording of the 2022 LCAN and Collective Impact webinar. We're so happy that you're here and thank you for spending some time with us today to learn more about LCAN and Collective Impact in Iowa. My name is Ann Thomas. My role at Iowa College Aid is development and oversight of the LCAN grant program. I want to tell you a little about what we will talk about today. We will provide some background on the LCAN grant program as part of Iowa College Aid's community engagement initiatives, and it's designed to increase college attainment at the community level. We're going to give you a little bit of information about the collective impact framework, which is the basis for the LCAN grant program in Iowa. We will talk about the series itself, what the grant funds and how you can start an LCAN, and then next steps if you're interested in applying for an LCAN grant. I would like to introduce my colleague, Megan Sybil. Bear with me one moment here. So Megan is going to kick us off. Megan serves as the primary contact to half of the LCANs across the state and plays a key role in program development. Megan is also the lead on Iowa's Career and College Readiness Academy, which offers online professional development courses to counselors, teacher leads, and administrators in creating a college-going culture for students. Megan is herself an educator. She's a history PhD and a professor in her spare time. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Megan.
Thank you, Ann. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Iowa College Aid and just give background for those who might not be familiar with who we are as a state of Iowa agency, and then I'll dig into collective impact and how it structures our LCAN program. But first, Iowa College Aid. On the screen there, you can see sort of our core language, our mission, our motto, our vision. We are a state agency with a governor-appointed board of commissioners. We are the only state of Iowa agency that works across all sectors of higher ed, so community colleges, private colleges, four-year universities, etc. And we really want to emphasize at this point and throughout our conversation that we as an agency define college broadly. We don't just support post-secondary education in terms of four-year or even two-year degree. We want to see students and Iowans be able to seek out a post-secondary ed credential of some kind, if it's an apprenticeship or whatever shape that might take. We really, our aim is on college broadly defined. In terms of the organizational makeup of our agency, we really have some key divisions within our agency that are public facing. So starting in the upper left, we have research and communications. Our research division has really expanded in recent years and provides some leading information and data around education and post-secondary ed in particular in our state. We also have a financial aid and post-secondary registration division. And then on the bottom, you see community engagement, which is where the LCAN program itself lives. Overall, sort of agency-wide, we have some key areas that we strive to embody. So first off, we like to see ourselves as a trusted information source for Iowans, and this gets to our research division and the work that they do. We really aim to increase and align resources to make sure that Iowans have what they need in terms of seeking out post-secondary educational opportunities. And then we also want to make sure that we're providing and supporting activities to meet the needs of Iowans as it relates to post-secondary ed. So all of these things taken together really represent sort of who we are as an agency and where we focus our efforts. As I said, the LCAN program lives within the Community Engagement Division. And this image really takes you into the way in which we view our role in terms of supporting students and communities with our community engagement work. So really at the center of what we do is the student, right? We want to make sure that we're providing everything we can to ensure that all Iowa students can be successful after high school. An important piece of that is, supporting staff and building capacity for staff, making sure, for example, through professional development opportunities and other programming that we have, that staff are empowered and able to support students in a variety of ways around post-secondary attainment. And of course, our staff, our schools, our students don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a broader community of individuals who seek to support them. And that's really an important piece of our LCAN work, is to engage the broader community around post-secondary education and the community's need for supporting post-secondary ed for their students and for adult learners across the spectrum. Just to give you a sense, beyond LCANS, what other initiatives we have in our community engagement program. So you can see LCANS there on the left hand of your slide. This, of course, is a community grant program. We also, in community engagement, offer courses through the Iowa College and Career Readiness Academy. This is a suite of online professional development programs for school counselors, for K-12 administrators, for post-secondary ed staff, anyone who really works in post-secondary ed access and attainment. These are professional development courses for them. We also have our Course to College program. So Course to College is programming that works directly with school counselors and in schools to provide programming support around the 5 steps of college going, which we define as prepare, apply, finance, decide, and go. Another piece of our community engagement work is the Future Ready Gear Up Iowa program. This builds on previous iterations of the Gear Up program in Iowa, which partners with low-income school districts around the state to support college going and attainment in those communities. Finally, we have our AmeriCorps program, which places members or volunteers in schools, in communities, in various capacities to help do direct service with students, both at the high school level and at the college level as well. So all of these programs taken together really form the framework of our community engagement division, and LCAN is a key piece of this. So to dig down a little bit further into our current LCAN program and what this looks like across the state, you can get a sense here of the different LCANs that we have. You'll note that we have year 1s, year 2s, year 3s, and year 4s. Located, some of them are geographically bound. So, our Mason City LCAN is located in Mason City up in northern Iowa. We also have LCANs that are more population focused, that are not bound by a community or a county. These 2 statewide initiatives are called Latinos Can, which focuses on educational attainment for the Latinx community, and our opt-in LCAN focuses on educational attainment for systems involved youth. So if LCAN is something you're interested in and you see a geographical area on the map that might be close to where you are and you would want to reach out and maybe talk to someone who's doing this work, please feel free to let us know and we can make that connection for you. A key sort of basis for understanding the work of LCANs across Iowa and potentially in your own community is really a focus on the collective impact framework. So collective impact, as a sort of academically defined term, really comes out of this article written in 2011 that was in the Stanford Social Innovation Review in the winter of 2011. And our next slide kind of gets into a little bit of what of how this was defined in a formal sense. So collective impact is a cross-sector collaborative approach to solving complex social problems, right? So collective impact as a sort of phenomena could be applied to issues related to hunger, to healthcare access, to homelessness, to environmental problems, and to education, which is the approach that we take at Iowa College Aid through our LCAN program. So collective impact as it intersects with Iowa LCANs really pulls out these threads of a cross-sector collaboration and incorporates them into a community-led approach to increasing post-secondary ed attainment. We do have a very short video linked here in the slide, which might provide an even sort of better overview of what collective impact is and what it can do. So if we could open the video, it's just a 2-minute video that will I am not getting any audio.
So I believe what we will do for this is include the link as an attachment to this presentation so
Perfect.
that we ensure the audio is there.
No, that's great. So yeah, if as you're working through this, you feel like you want to dig a little deeper into what collective impact looks like, please do make sure to take a look at that video. So again, the emphasis here is on cross-sector collaboration aimed at addressing complex social issues. Again, to sort of get at the intersection of collective impact and Iowa LCANs, right? So our LCANs are collective impact efforts working to improve college access and success within communities across Iowa. And again, we want to emphasize our definition of college here. Any post-secondary education is what we're aiming to support. So, maybe in your community, the emphasis is on, workforce within a specific industry that requires a certificate of some kind, and maybe not necessarily, the traditional 4-year degree. That's completely fine, and within the scope of LCAN and what this program seeks to do. It's really about identifying the needs in your community and then bringing people together from a wide range of sectors to work on solutions to that particular issue. So when we talk about collective impact, and when we more specifically talk about if a community is ready for an LCAN based around the collective impact model, we really want you to reflect on the extent to which these 3 preconditions are present in your community. So we want you to ask yourselves, are there champions? Are there people in your community who really are at the forefront in terms of advocating around the importance of post-secondary education? If it is to meet workforce needs or whatever the case may be, do you have people there for whom this is an important cause and would be willing to rally around it? The second piece of this, in terms of evaluating whether or not this program is right for your community, is identifying financial resources. Now, with this grant program, this is the initial sort of seed money for an LCAN. But from day one, we ask that our LCAN communities be thinking about long-term sustainability and whether or not the resources exist in a community to ensure that the LCAN initiative will live beyond the 4-year life of the grant. We also want our potential grantees to consider whether or not there's an urgency for change, excuse me, in their community. Is this an issue that people are willing to come together and spend their own time and resources focusing on? Is there that urgency for change, the recognition that something different needs to happen in order to make sure that the community's needs are met, and specifically in this case around post-secondary ed education. So in your community, if you feel like these 3 preconditions are there, you will be, potentially well placed to pursue the establishment of an LCAN. So just to sort of dig in a little bit more into what we mean, for example, by identifying influential champions and what we mean by engaging a cross-sector coalition of leaders in your community. Who do we mean? K-12 schools, for example, is one sort of sector that we would expect to be involved in what we call your leadership team, right? The folks who are at the table really steering the establishment of the LCAN and its future work. So K-12 school representation, is key in this. Folks from higher ed, philanthropy, nonprofits, business and government, and then other groups, which should include, in almost all scenarios, a focus on the population that the LCAN is focused on. So if the LCAN eventually decides to focus on underrepresented minority groups, it is always a good idea to make sure that you have representatives from that population sitting on your leadership team. Other sort of additional groups to consider would be, folks from the research field, from media, and so forth. Continuing sort of the theme of how to identify our influential champions around LCAN related efforts. Again, K-12, so more specifically, administrators, students, school counselors. From higher ed, this could look like, representatives from four-year institutions, from community colleges, adult learners. A lot of nonprofit support that we see in LCAN comes from United Ways, local community foundations and other community-based organizations. From business and government, representation from the corporate world, from small businesses, workforce development, and elected officials are all typically in the mix when it comes to seeking out those leaders and other individuals who are going to be crucial voices to have on your leadership team. A bit more on the sort of financial resources precondition. Again, the grant represents sort of the seed money for an LCAN in a community, but it's also crucial for, again, for the LCAN to be thinking about and having conversations early on about how to sustain this work, how to make sure that people remain involved, that there are the necessary financial resources in place for the LCAN to have a life beyond the four-year grant cycle. And in terms of urgency for change, to dig into that a bit more, we really want to emphasize that it's key to have this sense of urgency around an opportunity like, an LCAN grant, to convince people that action needs to be taken now, that this is a crucial issue for the community. And we really, want to make sure that that is present in a community as we potentially explore citing an LCAN there. I do see we have a question in the chat. So the question is, in addition to financial resources, do you provide any training and technical assistance for recipients? That's a great question, and the answer is yes. So in addition to the financial sort of support that comes from the grant, and a key part of our connections with our local community include providing technical assistance and training on collective impact, on LCAN work. This is not a grant where you're sort of awarded the money and kind of sent out to do the work on your own. Our LCANs work very closely with our internal LCAN staff, Anne and I, to hopefully ensure that our LCANs are as well placed as possible for success. Okay, so we've talked about the three sort of preconditions that we like to see in place prior to the launching of an LCAN. We do want to just briefly touch on 5 conditions of collective impact. So let's say, you've determined that your 3 preconditions are in place, you've successfully, applied for an LCAN grant. Where will your efforts go as the LCAN develops and moves forward and matures? So these terms that you see on the slide here, are ones that would become familiar if you were to pursue and be awarded an LCAN grant. So these are 5 sort of elements of our grant series that the leadership team and other groups within the LCAN work to develop over the life of the grant and hopefully beyond. So a crucial part of this is the establishment of SMART goals around sort of commonly established goals and agendas. And these can look different for the most part from community to community. This is very much a community-based grant, and we want to make sure that the work of the LCAN reflects the needs of the community. Shared measurements is another key piece of the work of a collective impact initiative. And this really comes down to defining a common system of success to increase accountability and align effort. So making sure that everyone, after SMART goals are agreed upon, after data is agreed upon for measuring those SMART goals, everyone is agreed in terms of how those goals will be measured. And that gets to that shared measurement system. Mutually reinforcing activities is also a part of this, right? So making sure that each partner is doing what they excel at while remaining coordinated within the wider network. Continuous improvement. And this is about getting to a place where everyone on the LCAN leadership team and on any associated work groups feels comfortable with each other, that there's trust there, that there's collaboration and transparency within the LCAN itself and in terms of its own sort of internal operations. And then the backbone support infrastructure. This is the element of LCAN where the work is sort of driven forward. And typically this takes the shape of an LCAN coordinator. We'll talk more about that role, and the fiscal agent, the agency that typically, though not always, applies for the grant, but then does handle sort of the functions of grant administration. So these, again, were you to be awarded a grant, these 5 conditions, these 5 elements are something that you'd be trained on and become much more familiar with. Also, if you're wanting to dig deeper into LCAN and some current Iowa LCANs, we'll make these links available for you. So the Michigan College Access Network, MCAN, really has been a leader in the field of collective impact tied to college attainment, nationally. So we, as Iowa College Aid, really built our program from taking sort of as inspiration the work that Michigan did. We have sort of Iowanized our model since then, but Michigan really is a leader in this field. We've also included links to videos from some of our own Iowa LCANs. You can see those on the slide as well. And again, those links will be made available if you're interested in watching those. Finally, I wanted to sort of leave everyone with this quote, which I think really gets at the heart of our LCAN initiatives and what we seek for them. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that's really, I think, the core of what our LCANs seek to do and how we seek to support them in that work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne to continue talking about the process, the framework of building an actual LCAN.
All right, thank you, Megan. And as Megan said, we will make all of these links available to the videos and also a series of readings. We will do that by sharing the actual slides with the links included in addition to the recording on our website. So Megan, talked about the collective impact framework, particularly the 3 preconditions and the 5 conditions that were outlined in that 2011 Stanford Social Innovation Review article. That is what serves as the framework for the LCAN grant model, originally, by way of the Michigan model, which there is a link to a video that gets into more detail about MCAN, which was kind of the that's how Iowa was introduced to this idea of applying collective impact to college attainment in Iowa communities. One thing that I want to point out is that it's been 10 years since that article came out in 2011. Recently, in light of the 10-year anniversary, there's a series of articles that have come out that highlight that this is an evolving field, and the emphasis is really around equity. And there's some great tools and information in these updated pieces around how to weave equity into every piece of those, the preconditions and the conditions. And that's something that we strongly emphasize in Iowa and have been, trying to do for some years now. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about just the year-by-year LCAN grant and what you're expected to do each year of the grant. The LCAN grant itself is a multi-year grant. It's 4 years long. Our hope is that, the funding and the technical assistance provide the framework and the tools and plant a seed for, you to be able to have an LCAN in your community that will flourish after the life of the grant. And so I've kind of broken this down into, try to use a little alliteration here to break down what you're doing in each of the years of the LCAN. So in year 1, what you're doing is you're assembling your team. There are some prerequisite items that have to be done as part of the grant application. But year 1 is really about just assembling that team. You're hiring that LCAN coordinator that Megan referenced, and your team is identifying your SMART goals around college attainment. So one thing that distinguishes this from other grants is that it's really your team, once you get them together, that is looking at the data in your community and identifying the goals that you want to try to meet, areas that you feel need to be improved in your community to increase college attainment. If you live in the grant world, you've heard SMART goals. You're probably sick of that term, but it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And we do provide a lot of technical assistance around how to establish a goal. So it's, someone might throw out something that they want to address in the community, but it's, putting those parameters around it so that you can really lay out a solid goal that you can measure and track progress on over time. You're also establishing your team structure and your leadership team and setting your priorities for the following year. Years 2 and 3, the word that I'm using for these years is activate. And I put a little superhero in there because this is when you are creating your common agenda, which is really your SMART goals, building that data dashboard to measure your progress, and forming work groups around the goals that you've established. And the work groups are an expansion of the team that you've already built. And I really feel like these are kind of your superheroes because you could call them the boots on the ground that go out in the community and activate these initiatives to make progress on your goals. But they're really kind of the superheroes that are out doing the work, building the initiatives, creating that change that you want to see in the community. You're also beginning to draft your continuous improvement and sustainability plan for your LCAN, which we will talk about in more detail at the grant workshop that we'll tell you about here at the end. In year 3, you're revising your resource map and data dashboard. These are things that start, at the beginning of the grant, and then you continue to, iterate and revise those as you go along. You're reporting out on some of those work group initiatives. So, we want to hear about the progress that's happening and is that impacting your goals? Are those initiatives actually moving the needle on your goals? And then you're building on your continuous improvement and sustainability plan for your LCAN. Year 4, the word for year 4 is assess. This is where you're taking some time to assess the work that you've done so far. What's working, what's not? How do we, embed continuous improvement into what we're doing, and really make sure you're in a good place going into the first year after the LCAN grant to ensure that the work will continue, that it will be sustained in the community. The illustration or the graphic here is just one of many continuous improvement or quality control illustrations that you can find if you Google it on the internet. But I really like this cycle of act, plan, study, do. Really, you should start with study, act, plan, and do. But it's ingraining into your process. What are we trying to accomplish? How do we know if we've made any change? What change can we make that will result in improvement? So, we want you to even continue to look at your goals. Are they still relevant? Do they need to be tweaked at all, in relation to the data in your community? But we just really emphasize that this is an iterative process, and all of the deliverables should continue to grow and develop and change. And you should be learning and letting what you learn inform how you do your work in a cyclical nature. So again, with year 4, you're continuing to revise and develop those deliverables from years 1, 2, and 3. And you're doing more of an assessment on your continuous improvement and sustainability plan, and thinking about and really sort of hammering down your plans for year 5, so the first year after the grant and beyond. The LCAN grant funding priorities. So what does this grant actually fund? It provides funding for a coordinator position. We really believe strongly that one other thing that distinguishes this from maybe other task forces or initiatives is that there's a dedicated position, and this person is key to driving the initiative forward. It also supports travel and training. As you may have guessed, the last couple of years, we haven't spent as much on travel and training because there's a great deal of training and meetings that are taking place virtually. But as things continue to pick up again, we do anticipate spending more in this category. And also there's a lot of online trainings available. As we talked about earlier, Iowa College Aid does provide a great deal of technical assistance. But we also, send folks to training at the, regional, national, international level, because we want you to stay on top of what's going on, not just from our perspective, but out in the field with Iowa College Aid. Materials and supplies. So we do allow for funding to support materials and supplies to fund your initiative. This includes things like food for meetings and events, printed materials for outreach initiatives. There's really a wide range of things that this can go towards. Sometimes it includes things like laptops, for the coordinator, for other initiatives where you're doing work out in the community. And then contracted services. So we do have some LCAN coordinators that are employees, and then we have others that are contracted. And so you have the option of whether you want that to be a contracted position or you want that to be someone that's employed with one of your LCAN partners. And then we do pay for a portion of indirect costs, and we'll hash out the details of that in the grant application workshop. So this is just a high-level look at the grant award structure itself in terms of finances. There is a match requirement. And the reason that is there is because we want to ensure that your LCAN will be sustainable after the life of the grant. That goes back to, one of those 3 preconditions that the financial resources have to be there. The LCAN grant provides really solid seed funding, but the LCAN grant alone cannot support an LCAN initiative. We ask that you apply within the $50,000 range. That's intentionally, there is an intentional range there because we want you to ask for for what you need, and really deliberate on that budget based on what you need for your particular initiative. You'll see there's a 25% match requirement the first 2 years of the grant, and then in years 3 and 4, there is a 50% match requirement. This can be cash or in kind. We do not set an expectation that a certain amount is cash and a certain amount is in kind. We do strongly recommend that you have that cash match and that continues to increase over time and as you approach the end of the grant. So the LCAN coordinator, I just want to talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of the LCAN coordinator. So in the next few slides can serve as a resource to you. If you are interested in applying for a grant, one of the things that you'll have to submit is a job description for this LCAN coordinator. And the bullets on the next few slides are great reference for that job description. So the primary job of the coordinator, no surprise, is to coordinate the work of the LCAN. Their job is also to coordinate existing community resources. So having a sense of what resources already exist in the community and how those can be better aligned to maximize services and increase college attainment. Building the work groups based on priority areas that are identified by the leadership team through those SMART goals. The LCAN coordinator is a liaison amongst the leadership team, the work groups, and the community, ensuring that there is alignment in the effort and that everyone is sort of, going in the same direction. They are a momentum builder and they maintain continuous communication in between leadership team meetings and action team or work group meetings. We sometimes use work group / action team interchangeably. So these are what we feel are the LCAN coordinator core competencies. And I'm not going to read through these one by one, but please do refer to this as you're building your job description. If you do go ahead and apply for an LCAN grant. What I will say is that, again, we provide a great deal of technical assistance, and we're focusing on these core competencies as well. So, if a coordinator is maybe strong in 1 through 5 and needs to build those competencies around 6 and 7, we will work with them, and we will also work to help them find trainings, beyond our office, that you can use those travel and training funds to support. So with that, I just want to let you know that we are going to be having an LCAN grant workshop. This will get more into the nuts and bolts of the application process itself. If you've listened to all of this and you think, I do want to, get a group together and apply for an LCAN grant in my community, then this would be a great thing for you to attend on March 24th from 10 to 11. We do ask that you watch this recording prior to the workshop. And I would also say, if you're thinking, this is all a little overwhelming, what do I do first? I think the first thing that you would need to do is start to think about who are your key partners, who are your champions, who are going to be your partners in submitting this grant and also in establishing that leadership team. Also thinking about who is going to serve as the fiscal agent. So Megan talked about that backbone support. The fiscal agent is a big piece of that. The fiscal agent is who is going to submit the grant application, handle the financials, the claims for reimbursement, and generally the fiscal agent is the employer of record for the coordinator. So thinking about who might serve as that, and that needs to be a 501c organization. I'm just going to throw our contact information up here, and I see a couple questions in the chat, which is awesome. Christina is the division director, so Christina oversees all of those programs that Megan outlined in the community engagement division of Iowa College Aid. And then Megan and I's contact information is here as well. We would love to meet with you individually, set up a time for a Zoom chat or talk, one-on-one or with your team about any questions you have. We really enjoy talking to people about the program and hearing about your ideas because, we really need you to move this initiative forward. So anything we can do to help, we want to do. And I'm going to take a look at the questions. Are there anything potential LCANs can or should be doing before they apply for the grant? And I answered it. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, if there aren't any other questions or final thoughts from anybody, we'll go ahead and end the recording. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for your time and